Smart signings, massive crowds and a stealthy bus ride before home games have helped an MLS team foster an immediate connection with its fans. Riddle commemorated Atlanta United's inaugural season with a tattoo on each shoulder. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. May 17, 2018. Atlanta. Riddle moved to this city of transplants 14 years ago, and for much of that time, his life revolved around his job in the aerospace industry. His main sports fix was watching Arsenal matches on television each weekend. He knew little of Major League Soccer, but when Arthur Blank, the owner of the Atlanta Falcons, was awarded an expansion franchise in the league in 2014 and announced plans to call it Atlanta United, Riddle jumped at the chance to embrace a new team in his adopted hometown. He joined the Faction, a fan group that connected him to a cross-section of other Atlantans. He made new friends. They introduced him to more, and after Atlanta United's record-setting debut season last year, Riddle, 35, commemorated his new passion with a tattoo on each arm, an oversized Atlanta United logo on one side, and the Faction's shield on the other. "I just went all in," he said. "It's about putting down roots and participating in the community. For 10 years, I didn't look at Atlanta as my home. Now, Atlanta United is the glue to the community for me." As in much of the American South, the sports landscape in Atlanta is dominated by football, both professional and college. For transplants like Riddle without a tie to an existing franchise or university, true sports love can be hard to find. The Braves' long run of success in Major League Baseball in the 1990s and early 2000s is now a memory, and last year the team moved to the suburbs. The Hawks of the NBA have rarely drawn well, and two NHL hockey teams have come and gone. Last year, Atlanta United eagerly stepped into that pro sports void, smashing attendance records, dominating MLS merchandise sales and leading the league in scoring. 6 months after it first kicked a ball, it became only the fourth team in league history to qualify for the playoffs in its inaugural season. This year, its upward trajectory has continued unabated. Attendance has continued to grow, to about 50,000 fans a game, and the team is again competing for the league's best record. Image Zach McGee at work in the supporters section during an Atlanta United match in April. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. Atlanta United shares Mercedes-Benz Stadium with the NFL's Atlanta Falcons, who are also owned by Arthur Blank. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. A year after the team first took the field, Atlanta United flags now fly in front yards and from porches in many neighborhoods. Sports talk radio shows devoted to soccer have found an audience, and it is increasingly difficult to spend a day in downtown Atlanta without seeing someone in one of the team's jerseys. For a long time, Atlanta was known for traffic, sprawl and the airport, said Michael Tavaney, 38, another transplant and entrepreneur who works downtown. "It wasn't cool to be from Atlanta. But in the last 5 years," he said, he has sensed a growing pride in the city, especially among its younger residents. "This generation of people," Tavaney said, "want to create a special place." When Blank started Atlanta United, he had the money and patience to hire employees more than 2 years before the team was scheduled to play its first game, and so rather than recruit executives and coaches from other MLS teams, he looked overseas for talent, and for inspiration. "I understood clearly this was a global game and MLS was trying to compete, so I knew we would have to draw talent from around the world," Blank said before an April victory at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which his soccer club shares with his NFL team, the Atlanta Falcons. "American football is the top of the heap in America. But soccer is played in 209 countries. It's much more complicated than the NFL." Blank's first hire was Darren Eales, an affable English lawyer who played college soccer at Brown. Eales had worked most recently for the Premier League club Tottenham Hotspur, where, as Director of Football Administration, he was in charge of negotiating contracts and transfers, including a few involving players coming from, or going to, MLS. "The size of the stadium caused us concern," MLS Commissioner Don Garber said of his early talks with Blank, who was pictured with his wife, Angie. but Arthur kept saying, "I will fill the stadium." Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. The Atlanta United president, Darren Eales, likes to mingle with fans in the parking lots before every home game. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. For years, MLS clubs had looked to Europe for marketable names for the top end of their rosters and their payrolls. But when Eales joined Atlanta United in November 2014, he suggested something different to Blink. He wanted to focus on signing talented, lesser-known players in their 20s, mostly from South America, with an eye on developing them for a few years and then selling them to bigger, richer clubs in Europe. The strategy is the financial survival plan of the vast majority of the world's clubs, but in MLS, which had long preferred to spend its limited acquisition funds on more established, more well-known names, it qualified as revolutionary. Eales persuaded Blink, who would need to ante up millions of dollars to fulfill the vision, to see the moves not just as acquisitions, but as investments. With older players, there's no upside because they are at the ends of their careers, Eales said. They're 34, and maybe have 2 years left, and have little resale value. Signing a younger player to a multi-year contract, he argued, offered the potential that even the biggest purchases might pay for themselves one day. "You might get $20 million or $30 million, Eales said, and at the least, you might be able to get back what you paid the player." Part of Eales's job is to pick the right ones, to persuade 20-something South Americans to bet their professional futures on a team that did not yet exist. Eales hired Gerardo Martino, an Argentine coach known as Tata with a proven resume. He previously coached Paraguay, Barcelona and Argentina, and a discerning guy. The hiring of Martino gave Atlanta United instant credibility with the kind of players Eales planned to pursue, including Josef Martinez, a colorful Venezuelan forward then playing in Italy, Miguel Almiron, who had met Martino as he rose through the ranks with Paraguay's youth national teams, and Ezequiel Barco, a 19-year-old Argentine who cost a reported $15 million last offseason, the highest fee MLS has ever paid for a player. Paraguay's Miguel Almiron, 24. Atlanta United has focused on signing young talents, with an eye on resale, rather than aging European veterans. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. For Almiron, Martino's word was enough. "It came down to the fact that Tata called me and said, 'I want to count on you for this team,' he said. I told Tata I wanted to come even though I didn't know anything else about the project." Martino envisioned a swirling, high-energy game that Eales justified as worth its risks. "We're in the entertainment industry," he said, "so let's build a team that is attacking. If we're going to win a close game," Eales added, "I'd rather win 4-3, than 1-0. The thrilling, and sometimes risky, style has won over fans, who helped set a league single-game attendance record last season, broke it later in the year, then surpassed it again when more than 72,000 turned up for this season's home opener. At the core of those attendances is the team's season ticket base, which is over 37,000 strong." Don Garber, the commissioner of MLS, readily admits that he was among those shocked by Atlanta United's instant success. His view of the city, he said, had remained stuck in the 1990s, before the influx of corporations, the rebirth of downtown and the arrival of hundreds of thousands of newcomers changed Atlanta's demographics. He also had questioned the wisdom of playing in a cavernous NFL stadium in the Southeastern Conference college market, but he eventually deferred to Blink, who reassured him, repeatedly, that he had a better sense of his city. Atlanta had a reputation for transient folks from other places who didn't connect with any one thing except college football, Garber said. "The size of the stadium caused us concern, but Arthur kept saying, 'I will fill the stadium.' The fact that it was downtown was what put us over the finish line." Getting to the finish line on game day now starts with raucous tailgating in the parking lots around the stadium, a kind of SEC meets MLS vibe, and a couple of curious rituals. One dates to the team's first few games, when construction delays at Mercedes-Benz Stadium forced Atlanta United to begin its MLS life at the football stadium at nearby Georgia Tech. In that arrangement, the players dressed for games at the team's academy in suburban Marietta and then arrived at the stadium by bus, where fans greeted them as they walked to the locker room. Atlanta United players entering through a tunnel of fans before a recent match. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. For 10 years, I didn't look at Atlanta as my home, one fan said. Now, Atlanta United is the glue to the community for me. Credit Kevin D. Lyles for the New York Times. Once the $1.5 billion Mercedes-Benz Stadium opened, the players had spacious facilities and anything else they needed on site. But the team liked the idea of a grand arrival, so the walk-in has been preserved, with a little sleight of hand. Before nearly every home match, Atlanta United players eat a pre-game meal inside the stadium and then change into matching gray suits with white shirts and red ties. They then board a bus, which drives a short loop around the block before pulling up near the front gate. There, hundreds of fans wait along a long red carpet, cheering and high-fiving the players as they walk back into the building they just left. As part of the ritual, each player stops about halfway down the red carpet to sign a large replica of a gold-painted railroad spike, an allusion to Atlanta's history as a railroad terminus. When the players are finished, fans mob the spike to sign it themselves. Then, shortly before kickoff, members selected from the team's supporters groups, there are several, each with its own ethos, carry the spike on their shoulders into the stadium and down to the first row of the end zone seats. It is mounted onto a platform, and a fan with a mock sledgehammer, or a celebrity guest, pounds it 3 times as the roaring fans yell, ATL. At every game the rituals are repeated: another bus ride, another spike, another full-throated ovation. Often, another win follows. Thomas Thornton, who belongs to Terminus Legion, one of the supporters groups, was one of the fans who carried the golden spike to the field before a game in April. Raised near Atlanta, he has seen every other hometown team play, but nothing, he said, matches the communality and energy of an Atlanta United game. There's no better 72,000 people to spend an afternoon with than psychotic Atlanta fans, he said, his voice hoarse well before kickoff. It's truly our city, our club. And it will